Hello, I'm Tatakai, and I spent 90% of my time in closed alpha building ships in the SSC. I like to think that I'm a decent builder. Most ship tutorials out there are at least an hour long, but ain't nobody got time for that. So I'm here with the TLDR version. It's going to be short and sweet, and hopefully afterwards you'll be ready to make your own ship. Pray that it works. Once I cover the basics, I'll have a few pro tips at the end. In order to have something the game calls a ship, you need three things: beams, and thrusters that are attached to hardpoints that are attached to the beams. This is not a ship yet. The beams are welded, the thruster is connected to a hardpoint, but the hardpoint and beam are not yet joined. When I put a bolt here, now it's a ship as far as the game is concerned. Every ship will need cables and pipes. There are ducts too, but they're a little bit trickier to get the hang of. Cables transfer power and data, pipes transfer resources such as propellant, coolant for radiators, and ores between resource bridges and crates. They can bridge small gaps, but if you try to cross large open areas, they can snap off and break. I like to run them along the beams. Alright, we have a ship, but what do we need now? Every ship needs power. You can use generators and fuel rods, batteries, or solar, but generally every ship will want to have a generator and a battery or two. Why? Generators are not on or off. They have a slow ramp up time depending on a few things, but we'll go into detail on that later. So for my ship here, we're going to add one tier 1 fuel chamber and one tier 1 generator. T1 gens use T1 fuel rods, and both T2 and T3 gens use T2 fuel rod. Sorry, that's probably confusing. Tier 1 parts can only be used with Tier 1. Tier 2 and Tier 3 require a Tier 2 fuel rod, but can be mixed. These first examples will work, these next set will not. You cannot use Tier 2 or Tier 3 generators with Tier 1 fuel, and you cannot use Tier 2 fuel with Tier 1 generators. We'll need a socket board to connect power from the generators to the rest of the ship. Now we'll add a couple batteries. On top of this, the generator assembly needs cooling, and you can do this remotely with radiators on a hardpoint connected to a pipe socket board on the generator with cables and pipes, or directly to the generators with a coolant rack and cells. Cells need to be replaced as they are used. Radiators are their own working system but are generally less efficient than cooling cells. For simplicity, we'll use these coolant cells this time. Great, now the ship has power. Let's get some propellant for the thrusters. This is really simple. We'll just grab a small tank, attach it, run a pipe to the thruster. Done. Easy. We're halfway there. Now we just need a way to control the ship. First I'll go over the parts, and then we'll make them work. To do this, we need a main flight computer, which can control up to 50 groups of thrusters. Thrusters can be individual or grouped, and they need to be named. We'll come back to this in detail. We will also need a flight control unit. Basic ones only do basic forward, backward, yaw, pitch, and roll. Advanced adds strafing, up, down, left, right, and Premium adds some complex turning options, but 90% of the time, you'll just want basic or advanced. The MFC doesn't care about its orientation, but the FCU does. Make sure to align your FCU so that the arrows face the top of your ship and the arrows point towards the front. It should be aligned with your pilot chair like this. Okay, now we just need a pilot seat and stand, not a passenger chair, and we'll add a control table that easily bolts on right here, and on that table we'll put a couple of progress bars, a couple levers, and call that good. We'll call this stored battery power with a max rate out of 10,000 so that we can see our battery capacity. We'll call this fuel chamber unit rate so we can see our generators, and we'll call this stored raw fuel with a max of 300,000 to monitor our fuel rod. This last one will do gas container storage resource with a max of 1 million to check propellant. We'll name this lever FCU forward and cable everything together to the rest of the ship network. Now, when you sit in the seat and press your button tied to FCU forward, this value is sent to the FCU. The FCU then takes this and sends it to the MFC and figures out what thrusters need to be used in order to make that happen. So, our MFC and FCU automatically find each other, but the MFC needs to know what thrusters we have. The first slot it's looking for is thruster power level 01. So let's go to our thruster and rename this field to thruster power level 01. This value here matches this value here, which means everything is working and talking to each other. You can name them whatever you want, these are just the default names. Now for the last portion, which is kind of a pro tip, but in my opinion pretty much essential for every ship. We're going to add a YOLO chip to automatically manage the power. The generators do not care how much power the ship needs, and if you tell it to run 100%, it's just going to burn all of your fuel as fast as possible, even if the ship isn't moving. So we're going to grab a chip reader, a basic YOLO chip, we're going to pop that in there. Let's open the editor, and we're going to type in : fuel chamber unit rate limit equals parentheses 100 minus parentheses stored battery power divided by 100 parentheses go to 1. This just means that when our battery's at 100%, the fuel chamber will be at 0. When the batteries are at 75%, the chamber will be at 25%, and so on. There are a ton of ways to do this. You can modify it, make your own custom script, but this is a very basic version. Alright, we have a ship and it should fly. However, I know from experience it's not going to fly very well. So let's do two things. Add some stability thrusters. Be sure to name them, run cables and pipes. And we're going to add some more levers to control them. Boom, done. Let's fly. And there you have it, a basic ship. Easy. These are the basics and just the surface of what you can do in Starbase. Experiment with other components and ask questions if you have them, in-game or in the main SB Discord. There are always people willing to help. Alright, now for the pro tips. You can attach hardpoints to beams in many ways, some more cursed than others. These are all acceptable ways to bolt them. Just make sure to leave some room for your thrusters or devices you're going to attach to them. The snapping tool is very handy, and it shows you all the pre-made snapping points for every part. Sometimes it can be tricky to snap stuff together. I know a lot of people struggle with attaching hardpoints to thrusters. To be sure, you can grab the hardpoint, snapping tool, left click this point, right click the thrusters, left click this point, perfect snap, every time. Speaking of snapping, because the snapping points are not always where you expect them, use other parts to help. I'm a big fan of the 12 by 24 centimeter plates because they auto snap pretty much anywhere you want, and they can be easily added, manipulated, or removed. Diagnostics. If you made a ship and it doesn't work, remember my explanation of how the controls work. You move the lever, it tells FCU, which tells MFC, which tells the thruster. You can use progress bars and the U tool to check these values. Going off of the last tip, sometimes things in the SSC do not appear to work, but if you go into test flight they will. Example of these: MFC, FCU, and thrusters. When you connect these usually will not show that they are connected at first, until you go into the test flight, and you can see here that they are actually working and communicating just fine. And lastly, but probably the most important, get familiar with the durability tool. You will need to make sure that the ship has a warp class of at least 1.0 or else it will fall apart. For haulers with mining crates, use this tool to load them up and double check durability. Else you will make your fancy ship go out for mining, fill it up, and destroy it on your way home, losing all of your precious time, work, and probably the ship. Also, ships cannot have loose parts, so if you try to create a ship from the SSC and it has loose parts, you'll get an error. You can use this tool to check the parts to see if there's anything loose. Alright, that's it. Easy tutorial to get you going. If you like this, let me know what else you want in a TLDR format. I know most of the videos out there on Starbase are very lengthy, and like I said, ain't nobody got time for that. If you didn't like it, tell me why. Leave comments below. I read them all. And again, if you have any questions regarding how something works, or how to fix something, or ship diagnostics, don't be afraid to ask in the main Starbase Discord or in the game. The community is very friendly, and CA players are always around to help. Thanks for watching, good luck out there.